Here's how it started. Ben to the basket. Hard foul by Artest. Ben said, I've had enough. That's enough. I'm going to shove you. And now poor Tommy Nunez Jr. is trying to keep them apart.
See, that's the beer that came flying. Now, you'll see me running back there somewhere, but he comes right. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Now, does he know where that came from, or did he just go to the first place?
I'm not sure. But as you
can
see,
the night the NBA lost control. November 19th, 2004, the Palace of Auburn Hills, the defending NBA champion Detroit Pistons were hosting one of their biggest rivals, the Indiana Pacers. Indiana was winning 97-82, and there were exactly 45.9 seconds remaining. The game was essentially over. But those final 45.9 seconds would never be played. Instead, a hard foul will lead to confrontation. A confrontation will lead to a drink being thrown. And that single drink will help ignite one of the most infamous scenes in the history of professional sports. Players will enter the stands. Fans will come onto the court. Punches will be thrown. Security will lose control. And millions of people watching around the country will witness something the NBA never imagined could happen. It became known simply as the Malice at the Palace. But here's what sometimes gets lost when people watch those famous few minutes. This wasn't just a random fight. There was history between these teams.
We had just lost to Detroit the year before without you, and we smacked them there. People don't understand that that night was surreal. Detroit, they were the defending champs. We were coming off the replay loop of Tayshaun blocking my shit. I want to get back. I'm hurt. I'm in a cast. But we going in. See, I always prided myself doing stuff on the road. How are you with 12 versus 20,000?
There were championship expectations. There was frustration. There was emotion. And when everything finally exploded, the consequences would change careers, destroy championship dreams, and force the NBA to change itself. This is the story of the Malice at the Palace. To understand November 19th, you have to go back to the previous season. The Indiana Pacers weren't just a good basketball team, they were elite. During the 2003-04 regular season, Indiana won 61 games, the best record in the entire NBA. Jermaine O'Neal had developed into one of basketball's premier big men. Reggie Miller was still chasing the championship that had escaped him throughout his legendary career. Steven Jackson would become another important piece of the team. And then there was Ron Artest, one of the most talented and unpredictable players in basketball. Artest had become an elite defender. He was very physical, relentless, and emotional. And in 2004, he was named the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. Indiana believed they had everything necessary to win the NBA championship. But there was another team rising in the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons. Detroit had built its identity around defense and toughness. Ben Wallace was one of the league's most intimidating defensive players. Chauncey Billups controlled the offense. Richard Hamilton never stopped moving. Tayshaun Prince gave Detroit length and versatilities. And Rasheed Wallace, he brought another level of toughness and emotion. And eventually, Detroit and Indiana collided. The series that started everything. Indiana and Detroit met in the 2004 Eastern Conference Finals. For the Pacers, this was supposed to be their year. They had home court advantage. They had won 61 games. They believed they could win the championship. Instead, Detroit defeated them in 6 games.
Pistons are 8 seconds away from a trip to the finals. There's Reggie out of the pack. There goes the three. Off for the first time in 14 years. 6 at halftime. The Pistons win the Eastern Conference. A lot of guts on both sides. Unfortunately, only one team can celebrate.
We're healed up, and we'll get better next year, and we're going to be back.
I want to congratulate the Pacers on a terrific season, and for Joe Dumars, the entire Pistons organization, and the great fans of Detroit, it's on to the final.
Then, the Pistons shocked the basketball world by defeating Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals.
We're overplaying guys on D. We're allowing them.
Rip Hamilton will do that.
Hamilton can't get it. They've used the other 11. Prince drives.
The Detroit Pistons. This reminds me of Patrick Ewing against Villanova. Just knock it out to scare him. He didn't
187 to win the NBA.
The city of Detroit, who believed in this team. And this team met their expectations, even though no one else expected it. So to your 2004 NBA champion Detroit Pistons, congratulations, and here's the trophy.
Detroit became champion. Indiana went home wondering what could have been. But inside the Pacers organization, there was still confidence. They didn't necessarily believe Detroit was better than them. They believed they could come back the following season and finish what they had started. That made November 19th more than another regular season game. It was the first meeting between the teams since Detroit had eliminated Indiana from the playoffs. Indiana had something to prove, and that night, they were proving it. The statement game. Indiana dominated Detroit. As the fourth quarter wound down, the Pacers had built a 15-point lead, 97-82. The defending champions were about to lose on their home floor. For Indiana, this could have been a statement, a message to Detroit. We're still here, and this year might be different. There were only 45.9 seconds remaining. There was almost no realistic path for Detroit to come back. The game was over. All Indiana had to do was finish those final seconds to lead the arena. Then Artest fouled Ben Wallace from behind as Wallace attempted a layup. Considering the score and how little time remained, Wallace didn't appreciate it. He immediately turned around and shoved Artest hard. Players rushed towards him. Coaches moved in. Officials attempted to separate everyone. Steven Jackson became involved. Players were yelling. People were pushing. For several moments, it looked ugly. But it still looked like something NBA fans have seen before. A hard foul. A shove. Players talking trash. Officials breaking everything apart. And eventually, everybody goes home. Except this time, that wasn't going to happen. The scores table. This is one of the most misunderstood moments of the entire incident. Ron Artest eventually separated himself from the confrontation. Then he walked towards the scores table and laid down. To someone watching without context, the image looked bizarre. A massive confrontation was happening around him, and Artest was stretched out on the scores table. But according to Pacers president Donnie Walsh, there was a reason. Artest had reportedly been advised that when he felt himself becoming too emotionally charged, he can disengage from the situation and collect himself. So that's what he was attempting to do. Instead of continuing the confrontation with Wallace, Artest removed himself. He laid on the table, and for a moment, it actually appeared that the worst might be over. But here's something incredible. Approximately 90 seconds passed between Ben Wallace's initial sub and the moment that changed everything. Think about that. A minute and a half. Enough time for people to calm down. Enough time for security to regain control. Enough time for everyone to walk away. Most of the attention was still focused on Ben Wallace and the confrontation around midcourt. Artest remained near the scorer's table. Then, something came flying from the stands. A spectator named John Green threw a plastic cup towards Ron Artest. The cup traveled through the air and struck Artest in the chest, and everything changed. Artest immediately jumped from the scorer's table. He looked towards the crowd, then he charged into the stands. Within seconds, the invisible barrier separating NBA players from NBA fans disappeared. Artest moved through spectators trying to locate the person responsible. But in the confusion, he initially confronted the wrong man. A spectator named Michael Ryan was grabbed by Artest because Artest apparently believed Ryan had thrown the drink. He hadn't. The actual cup thrower, John Green, was elsewhere in the crowd. And that mistake demonstrates exactly why entering the stands was so dangerous. There were thousands of people, noise everywhere, people moving in every direction. Adrenaline was exploding. There was no controlled way to determine who had done what. And now other people became involved. Steven Jackson followed Artest into the stands. Fans surrounded players. Drinks were thrown. Punches were thrown. People who had nothing to do with the original confrontation suddenly found themselves in the middle of it. The Palace has gone from basketball arena to chaos. The images were everywhere. Sports television, national news, newspapers, and the radio. David Stern responded quickly. 9 players were ultimately suspended. And combined, the suspensions totaled 146 games, and the players lost more than $11 million in salary. Ron Artest received by far the biggest punishment. He was suspended for the remainder of the season. That eventually meant 73 regular season games and another 13 playoff games. 86 games total. At the time, it was the longest suspension the NBA had ever issued for an on-court incident. Artest alone lost nearly $5 million in salary. Steven Jackson received 30 games. Jermaine O'Neal was originally suspended for 25 games, although that punishment was later reduced to 15 through arbitration. Ben Wallace received 6 games. Anthony Johnson received 5. Several other players received 1-game suspensions, but the number don't completely explain the damage, because Indiana wasn't simply losing players. They might have been losing their best opportunity to win a championship. This becomes a criminal case. The NBA suspensions weren't the end of the consequences. Now law enforcement became involved. Video footage was reviewed. Witnesses were interviewed. And eventually, both players and fans faced criminal charges. 5 players were charged with assault. 5 fans also faced charges. Players ultimately received probation and community service related to the penalties. Fans faced consequences as well, including bans from Pistons home games. The story had crossed into territory almost unheard of in professional basketball. This wasn't simply about technical fouls. This wasn't simply about suspensions. Actions inside an NBA arena have become part of a criminal investigation. 45.9 seconds. Think about this. That's all that remained. Indiana was winning by 15. The game was finished for all practical purposes. Had those 45.9 seconds passed normally, November 19th, 2004 probably wouldn't have meant anything today. It would simply be another box score buried somewhere in NBA history. Pacers 97, Pistons 82. Next game. Instead, those 45.9 seconds became some of the most infamous seconds professional basketball has ever seen. 9 players suspended, 146 games lost, more than $11 million in salary gone, criminal charges, fans banned, security policies changed, and possibly an NBA championship opportunity destroyed. All because a basketball confrontation that appeared to be calming down was reignited by one object flying from the stands, a plastic cup. That's the legacy of the Malice at the Palace. Not simply that players fought fans, but how quickly one bad decision can trigger another, and another, and another, until nobody is in control anymore. More than 2 decades later, we still remember the punches. We still remember Artest charging into the crowd. We still remember the chaos. But maybe the biggest question isn't what happened. We know what happened. The bigger question is, what would have happened if that cup had never been thrown? So I want to hear from you. Who deserves the most blame for the Malice at the Palace? Ron Artest, Ben Wallace, John Green for throwing the cup, the other fans who became involved? Or was this simply a situation where too many people made bad decisions at exactly the wrong time? And here's the bigger basketball question. If the Malice at the Palace never happened, do the Indiana Pacers win an NBA championship? Drop your answer in the comment section below. And if you enjoy documentaries about the moments, controversies, and forgotten stories that change sports history, hit that like button and subscribe to Dizzle Sports Channel. Because sometimes, one moment doesn't just change a game, it changes history. And as always, I appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll catch you with the next one. It's your boy Dizzle. I'm out. Peace.